Um, this work is work by my student, Meir Hahami, who couldn't join us. I will be presenting it, my MSc student. Uh, Sorry that I can't be with you in Novi Sad. Hopefully next year we'll be all be able to meet in person. For this year, what we have is Zoom. So I'll start with motivation. The subject is success factors for distributed software distribution projects in Israel. This is quite different from other presentations made. Uh, Instead of dealing with the engineering, I will deal more with uh, factors which of development, of software development, of human psychological factors. So geographically distributed development is, for many years now, uh, a common software development paradigm used all over the world. And I'm from Israel, and Israel has always been a major player in geographically distributed development, uh, both in startups, which usually had a component overseas, and with many multinational companies which had their development centers in Israel. We have development centers from IBM, from Microsoft. Obviously, we are not the only development center for those countries. So geographically distributed development has always been very popular in Israel. There is some research. Actually, there is quite a lot of research about success factors of geographically distributed development uh, all over the world, but there is very little about it in Israel, which prompted us to look at this subject and see if the success factors of development, geographically distributed development in Israel are the same, understanding them, so we could do better development. So this was our motivation to look at this subject. Uh, Going back to the background, to explain where geographically distributed development comes from, uh, obviously, all development companies want to be effective, and effectiveness is in the market we have today is usually measured in reducing the time to market. The market changes very quickly, and the company which manages to be first in the market usually takes a large share of the market. So reducing the time to market is often the critical issue. And this is done in many ways. Uh, but basically, we are looking at getting higher yield from the developers, uh, having high quality developers. That's one factor. And when the other thing that you can do, other than get more developers and better developers, is to be more efficient in your time utilization. And this led to continuous around the clock software development and testing and development cycles. And so that's the second factor. Third factor is in effective software development is that you can use better development methodologies. So what we are looking at is the second factor, efficient time utilization. We need high yield software development, and what we can do in order to get better efficient time utilization is uh, to enable, uh, which is enabled by communications infrastructure, is to use geographically distributed software development. So this was this became an obvious thing after trying cost-effective development and high yield. The next obvious step is to use more time. So you can have better use of your time if you are more efficient, if you can have more developers, but in the end, there is a limit to what you can do, and what you would like to do is to work more hours, work around the clock. So this brings us to the definition of geographically distributed development, which is also called global distributed development these years. The definition is that this is team-based software development, which is dispersed on different locations, countries, and time zones. So this is a definition. You need to have team-based software development, and you need the teams to be dispersed over different locations. This enables the well-known follow the sun development cycle. What I show here is what we usually do in Europe and in Israel. We have developers in Israel or in Europe, and when they finish working, they send their work to the US, to developers in the US, uh, at evening, which is exactly the good time to start working in most of the states in the United States. When the United States finish their work, they forward it to the people usually either in Australia or in India, where there is a lot of geographically distributed development. So this is a typical follow the sun cycle for Israel. The driving factors, it seems from what I showed before, that the only driving factor for geographically distributed development is the need to have to use all time resources, but this is not the only case. So the driving factors behind it were always international companies, which became global, wanting to use their resources around the world. The progress in global communications enabled easy communication with remote sites. What what became obvious is that high quality human resources are going to be available at different places. And this was also a main driving factor for geographically distribution. The ability to allocate human resources to project and to build teams of different sizes with different needs also was a main driving factor, and the adoption of software products which suited local market expectations was the final driving factor which enabled the growth of geographically distributed development. Uh, Geographically distributed development is characterized by having a large number of development groups. They are usually geographically distributed. They are temporally, there is a large temporal diversity between the teams. And these are technical matters, but there is also a very big social and cultural diversity between developers in different places. As anyone who tried it will say, these social and cultural diversities are usually a very big obstacle that exists not only mainly at the beginning of the project, but also throughout the project. And they are made much stronger by the linguistic diversity. We want to say that we are all talking English, but as this presentation and this conference very well demonstrated, our accents are very different, and our linguistic capabilities are different, and understanding people is not only knowing English, but also knowing the context of discussion, and the context is very diverse, very intricately associated with the cultural and social diversity. There is also political and legislative diversity between teams. So all of those factors we discussed of why we want geographically distributed development, but these factors make our life much more difficult when we do want to use it. So now that we discussed the factors that created the growth factors and the difficulties with geographically distributed development, I would like to discuss the research methodology that we used. We went for a qualitative meta-research paradigm, which was combined with data triangulation. So meta research is a methodology which looks at qualitatively looks at a large body of research and tries to deduce facts qualitatively from this large body of research. So as I said in the beginning, there is a lot of research about geographically distributed development, hundreds and hundreds of articles. So this is quite suitable for meta research, and we use that in order to deduce uh, what uh, uh, what are the factors uh, which affect geographically distributed development according to the body of literature. And we used that's meta research. We triangulated this research with semi-structured interviews. Sorry, with semi-structured interviews with of practitioners in Israel, and we use the typical keywords which we found in the literature and in those semi-structured interviews, and we triangulated both of these sources. So basically, this diagram explains it all. Do I have? I think you can see my pointer. So we started the research. You can see most of this area is discussed is about the literature, and here is the interviews, and in this area they are combined. So we started small with four basic terminology definitions, which through Google Scholar search yielded 200 articles. We identified words, synonyms, and terms in those articles, and this yielded 27 word synonyms and terms. This was a circular process where we start with an article, uh, we start with a word, we uh, do a search and improve our subject, our keywords. Uh, then we did database searches on the ACM, on Scopus, and on IEEE. You can see the number of articles. We filtered and selected papers which were the top quoted papers in each area. In these papers, we identified again keywords and merged all the work, which yielded 8 factors. We used the same similar process on semi-structured interviews, yielded 173 keywords, and again mapped them to those categories, and this enabled us to do the triangulation. So now that we discussed the methodology, we can discuss the results. So first of all, and for all, the 7 categories which impact development, the success of development according to the literature are in this slide, sorted from more important to less important, more occurring. Actually, all we can say is that they occurred more in the literature. So the first place is global project management. The second is indeed the cross-cultural collaboration, and so on. You can see that the next ones, communication, software, software development, and software tools are technical capabilities. Finally, and the final one, training. So this was from the literature, and the Israel categories basically agreed on the top three criteria. So there was agreement on project global management being important, on the difficulties from cross-cultural collaboration, and the importance on communication. But there was one major difference, which was a new category. So we found out that in Israel, a category that could not be matched to other categories was what we call the level of interest differences. So we find out that teams in Israel are very occupied with differences of interest. For example, they would say each company has its own politics. Senior management believes it's good to share knowledge, but we are concerned about losing our jobs and so on. And these are non-technical considerations which deal with difference of interest. And this was quite surprising. We didn't expect to find the difference in Israel. We also found out that there was less emphasis on software design, tools, training, and infrastructure. Uh, and all of this can be summarized in this one slide. We can see that cross-cultural collaboration and project management are indeed, and followed by communication, are the biggest ones. And there is a large one about conflicting interests and minor about the other things. And in Israel, I believe that this is typical. In Israel, people would say that these things seem to make themselves work. We don't really need to deal so much with them. It might actually also be a result of this being more mature in Israel. So since this idea of geographically distributed development is so mature, uh, we already have the training, the designs, the infrastructure, and the tools needed. So basically, that's all I had. Um, I will be happy to take any questions.
I would like to ask you a question. At the beginning, you used the term qualitative meta research. In anthropology, education, and in general in the social sciences, they use what is called qualitative research method. And what you call qualitative meta research is based on the qualitative method of research in anthropology and social sciences.
Yeah, yeah, these are very similar things. They come from the same place. The idea of both of them is mainly around keywords and about occurrences of so the idea of qualitative research is that instead of measuring something, you look at the text. So your tool, your sample is not an occurrence in nature, but an occurrence in the text. So, these qualitative methods of research are dealing with how do you deduce facts from text. So in our case, this text was a meta research in the sense that we did not really read 200, 600 articles. We did a meta research, looking at occurrences of words. But in the interviews, we definitely did classic qualitative research. We looked at the interview, we wrote down, we transcribed the text, and then we looked at the text. So I think that within qualitative methods, these are the textual qualitative methods that we use. They are very common in the field that you mentioned. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Another question, comment?
Maybe just a short. Now, deep learning is everywhere, and maybe, deep neural network could do the research you did. How would you comment on this?
I agree. I definitely agree. Uh, there is a lot of. I must admit that I'm a small expert in qualitative research, and I believe that indeed there are moves into deducing. For example, what we didn't research was the connection between the keywords. So we just say these keywords occur a lot, but the obvious thing is to say, well, everyone which said cross culture also said project management. So and these are
Yes.
so yeah, and these are things that deep learning can deduce very easily. I think connection between things. Yeah, I believe this is
Yes, but on the other hand, it can lead to some maybe it also can bring some noise, I think.
yeah. There is also an area of natural language analytics is
Mhm.
deep learning based. We didn't use that. So this is very preliminary. It's a short article. I mean,
Yes, yes,
it's not the end. It's I would say that this is a preliminary research.
sure, sure. You will have a lot of follow-up work.
Yeah,
And you are welcome to come to Novi Sad, of course.
yeah. I hopefully next year.
Yeah,
Looking
right.
forward. Never been there. Thank you very, very much for the question.